Today on the BV3D channel, we'll turn this pile of parts into something really sweet, and we'll get started right after this. Hello 3D printing friends and welcome back. Okay, so today I want to show you this cool candy machine model by designer Caden 3D on MakerWorld. It's 100% 3D printable with no extra hardware to buy, and assembly is a snap, literally. The only thing you need to add is the candy jar and the candy. So let's talk about the candy machine model. This is actually Caden 3D's second version called the Ultimate Candy Machine V2 New and Improved. It's free on MakerWorld and there's a link to it in the description. What makes it new and improved? Well, there are fewer parts to print. The top now snaps onto the base, and the candy machine nameplate prints separately, so you can customize it if you want to. Some people have already done that, so you can download M&M's or Reese's nameplates if those are the candies you're going to be dispensing. This model is intended to work with the 64-ounce M&M's and Reese's Pieces containers sold by Costco, but some folks have modified the top piece to accommodate differently sized and threaded jars, and of course you could do the same. The thing I think I like best about this Ultimate Candy Machine is it has a pull handle on the side instead of the knob or the key that you turn on the front of a gumball machine. With the pull handle, it's like a slot machine that pays out every time. Printing this model is going to take a little while. The main base and top and the knob for the pull handle are printed in PLA and take about 8 hours in all. I did these all in red Panchroma PLA from Polymaker. It's a really good red. The gears take about another 3 hours. There's also a reducer piece that prints on this plate, and we'll go over what that's used for when we're putting this together. The funnel, spring, and locator pin should be printed in PETG. While the spring and the pin came out fine, the funnel didn't look so good. To be fair, the PETG I used is an old spool and could probably have done with some drying. Since I wanted to keep moving forward, I reprinted the funnel in PLA. Hopefully it holds up. If not, I can always reprint it in PETG. Anyway, those three pieces should be about a 2-hour print. The gear shaft and the pull handle should be done in a silk PLA if you want them shiny, but I didn't have any silk silver handy. And since the PETG was, quote, silver, I used it on these parts too. Despite how the funnel turned out, these came out fine and took about an hour and a half. The final piece here is the candy machine nameplate. This just uses a simple color swap with the text sitting on top of the nameplate. An AMS helps with this, but it's certainly not required. Worst case, you can just watch the print, pause when it starts printing the text, and swap in a new color by hand. My first attempt at this came out okay-ish. There were some gaps in the white that didn't look super great. I looked at the Bamboo Studio slicer settings and it was set to use the classic wall generator. The detect thin walls setting was also enabled, so this is about as good as it was going to get with classic. For this second attempt, I switched to using the Arachne wall generator and the result was better, but there were still a few gaps here and there. Those first two attempts were done with a 0.4mm nozzle. On the third attempt, I remembered that using a smaller nozzle diameter can give you more detail. Switching to a 0.2mm nozzle and keeping the Arachne wall generator gave this result, which, while it still has some tiny little gaps, is way sharper. If you're more of a perfectionist, a 0.2mm nozzle is going to make you happier, but it's going to cost you in terms of time. With a 0.4mm nozzle, the nameplate is about a half-hour print, but with a 0.2mm nozzle, it took about an hour and a half. So on a reasonably fast printer, you're probably looking at about 15 or 16 hours of print time to get all the parts done. Now it's time to put all these parts together and start dishing out some candy. There's an assembly guide that comes in the project, which I've printed out here, and I'm going to be following those steps, and of course you can do that too. I know some people like to see the whole process like a walkthrough instead of, or in addition to, following an instruction sheet, so that's what I'm doing here. Okay, let's double check that we've got all the parts printed. We've got the main body and the top threads, we've got the spring, We've got the gear shaft, the vertical gear, and the horizontal gear. We've got the locator pin. We've got the candy funnel. We've got the handle arm and the ball that goes on the end of it. And of course, that candy machine nameplate. And there's one optional part, which is this reducer. We'll see where that goes toward the end of the assembly. So the first thing to do is insert the vertical gear into the main body. The gear has two flat sides. One flat faces the bottom and one flat faces the front of the main body. The bore in the gear has an integral key, and that should be in the 12 o'clock position. Then insert the gear shaft into the side of the main body and through the gear bore. The keyway on the shaft should also be in the 12 o'clock position. Once it's in, check to make sure the gear shaft turns the gear easily and there's no binding. Next, it's time to install the return spring. And this is honestly about the most difficult part of the assembly. The spring has a hook that catches a tab inside the body, and it's also keyed to the gear shaft. Back the gear shaft out a bit so there's room for the spring. The way I install this is to keep the spring relaxed so it's easy to rotate it into alignment with the gear shaft. Once the two are aligned, push the gear shaft back into the main body to fully engage the spring. Finally, we can load the spring by pinching it a bit and hooking it over that tab. Check to make sure the gear shaft turns and that the spring's tension pulls it back into place. Now insert the small locator pin into the horizontal gear. You can use a bit of glue if the fit is loose. Insert the horizontal gear into the main body. The hole should be toward the left side. Check again to make sure the gears mesh smoothly when moving the gear shaft. Then align the candy funnel with the top threads. There's an alignment tab to keep everything oriented correctly. Slide the candy machine sign into place at the front of the main body. Now we're at the point where the reducer comes into play. If you're going to be using this with peanut M&Ms like I'm doing, you won't need it. But if you're going to be using this with regular M&Ms, you might want to install it. This keeps the machine from dispensing too many of the smaller candies at one time. If you want to use it, just drop it into the horizontal gear like this. Next, snap the top thread assembly onto the main body. Make sure the candy funnel's hole is aligned with the hole in the horizontal gear. Okay, almost done. Add the ball to the end of the handle, then insert the handle into the gear shaft. The tapered end of the handle goes into the gear shaft, so make sure you don't put the ball on the wrong end. If the handle fits a bit loosely, a bit of glue will help to secure it. To keep the candy machine from sliding around on the counter, I recommend adding 4 adhesive non-skid feet to the bottom. Finally, attach the candy jar. The easiest way is to do it all upside down. Take the lid off the jar and then screw the whole machine onto the jar in place of the lid. Then turn it all right side up. Well done! Pull the handle and enjoy some sweet success. So that's the ultimate candy machine. Thanks to Kayden 3D for making this model freely available. Thank you for watching, and big thanks to everyone who supports the channel, whether with channel memberships or by using the links in the description. If you liked this episode, give it a thumbs up and maybe subscribe so you don't miss new ones. Well, 3D printing friends, that's about all the time we have for this one. And now that we're at the end, let's go print something sweet.